The State versus Rudeus Greyrat. Now, I'm sure most of y'all are reasonable enough to understand the intent here. I personally hate the subjects of this video for reasons I think are perfectly reasonable for at least a well-adjusted adult. Now, you might think I'm wild in some takes, and that's fine. I expect and encourage different views, even if I don't necessarily agree with them. But the point of this video is not to convince any of you of anything. I am merely making it out of sheer concentrated hate, and for that reason, I'm gonna milk it for all it's worth. Today, the defendant is charged with a season's worth of nonsense. Season 1 only though, so let's begin. Exhibit A. Rudeus lusts after his own mother. Now, I would like to believe that you, my very smart and attractive audience, aren't into any of that Alabama nonsense, right? Right? Please. So, I'm sure we were all shocked when this man, at 34-year-old in his past life, wakes up as a baby, looks at the first woman he sees, and immediately has lustful thoughts.
But she's gorgeous. European? Either way, if she's just gonna leave herself open like that.
Like, okay, fine. He didn't know it was his mother, I'll give you that. But what kind of sick, twisted fuck has lustful thoughts about a stranger the moment they open their eyes after getting run over by a truck? The defense will probably say he didn't act on it, To which I say, the thought was a crime, Your Honor. The thought was the crime. Now, I would like to show you Exhibit B, and brace yourselves. My dear audience, I feel violated, borderline molested by what this sick man says next in regards to his own mother. Now, Rudy admits he's 34.
Damn.
On the inside of his brain mind. Then he waxes poetic about being jealous of his parents bumping uglies. But that's not the worst part. He says he'll take solace in the fact that he can suckle on his mother's breasts, but he laments that it doesn't give him a raging boner on account of him being a baby. Let me repeat that. This sick, perverted man is disappointed that being breastfed doesn't make him hard.
If I had to guess, I'd say they're in their mid-20s. I'm 34, so they're practically kids to me. Gotta admit, I'm jealous they're making babies at that age. Still, getting to suck on a hottie's fun bags for free rules. Didn't turn me on, though.
Why is that a bad thing, Mr. Julius? Why is not getting erect from suckling your mother's breast a bad thing? Now, members of the jury, I need you to know that I, the persecutor, am not a prude. I've done weird stuff. We all have, I'm sure. But have I ever worn a maid's panties over my face like a gas mask and then intentionally scare her with it? No, I have not. But Rudy, as a toddler, steals the maid's underwear. He puts it on his head, and then he pulls it down over his face and jumps out to frighten her. The maid naturally screams in terror. Now, the defense would probably say, oh, he's just a kid, it's funny, it's just jokes, but we all know the truth. That's a 34-year-old man wearing a woman's worn underwear as a face veil while terrorizing the hired help. Now I ask, is that a prank or is that a crime? Moving on to Exhibit D, the lolly admission. Now, and I might need the bailiff to get a bucket ready because I might vomit. Now, Rudy, in his internal monologue, because even he knows not to say this out loud, admits that he wants a lolly.
Teacher is a socially awkward lolly with resting bitch face? She's perfect. I'd totally marry her.
Now, let me translate that from anime speak to English. I, Rudy, a grown man who is excited that young girls exist and want to condition one to be my partner.
What?
Ladies and gentlemen, that is not romance. That is a predator's mission statement. He literally admits to wanting to groom children, essentially. Moving on to Exhibit E. Now, some of y'all might not think that this is relevant to the case, but I assure you, it is. Now, this one is so wild, I actually had to rewind 3 times. Rudy falsely accuses his father, Paul, and let's be clear, Paul is a garbage person, but that's a different trial. Rudy accuses Paul of rape, specifically after discovering that Paul had an affair with the maid. Rudy jumps to the conclusion that Paul forced her, or rather forced himself upon her, with zero evidence.
Pure fiction.
Just because Paul is a horny idiot.
But to me, it didn't sound like Lily was allowed to say no to him.
Bruh.
What do you mean? It kind of sounded like Father was threatening her before.
Huh?
You did it to manipulate the situation so the maid wouldn't be kicked out. Altruistic reasons, I'm sure, but the maid herself later confirms that it was consensual. In fact, she is the one who seduced him. So Rudy used the trauma of sexual assault as a bargaining chip, which is utterly disgusting if you ask me. And now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I would like to present to y'all Exhibit F. And now I want you to look at the screen. That is a child. She is 9 years old at this point. Now listen to what Rudy says and what his father agrees with.
Oh, I know you're into little Sylphie, and you gotta admit, that girl is gonna be a total knockout when she grows up.
Yeah, of course she is. But I happen to think that she's super beautiful already.
This is a father and son bonding over how hot a 9-year-old is.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Okay, moving on to Exhibit G. Grooming Sylph on purpose. Now, this one is not subtext at all. In fact, I would go as far as to say it is just text. Rudy explicitly states in his internal monologue that he wants to raise Sylph to be his perfect woman. He tutors her, protects her, and isolates her from her friends. He even thinks about how she'll grow up not knowing other boys exist. That is textbook definition of grooming, ladies and gentlemen. He is a 34-year-old man mentally cultivating a child to be his future wife. He even calls her his first wife in his head before she's old enough to understand what marriage even is. This is not cute. This is not wholesome childhood friends. This is a predator farming. Moving on to Exhibit H, the fake kidnapping scene. Now this is where Rudy becomes a domestic terrorist. Rudy wants Eris to study magic. She refuses. So what does our brilliant 34-year-old genius do? He stages a fake kidnapping, of course. He hires some thug to pretend to abduct Eris so that he can rescue her. And then manipulates her into studying out of fear. But surprise, surprise, the thugs are actual kidnappers and they try to really take her. It goes awry. Eris gets traumatized. Rudy has to actually fight for his life and hers.
Any minute now, you
Looks like you don't know your place! Mouthy brats like you don't get to hit back!
Exhibit I. Groping Eris and attempted penalty death? While Eris is asleep, a 9-year-old child unconscious, vulnerable, Rudy gropes her naturally. He touches her inappropriately. And then, because that wasn't enough, he attempts to steal her panties off her body while she sleeps. Let me repeat that. A 34-year-old man in a child's body reaches under a sleeping little girl's clothes to take off her underwear. The only reason he doesn't succeed is because she wakes up and kicks him. And the show plays this off for laughs. There's a funny sound effect and everything. Eris calls him a pervert, ha ha ha. A classic Rudy, am I right? But no. Absolutely fucking not. That is not a punchline. That is a warrant for arrest. Exhibit J, the father's consent collision. Now, we enter a slippery slope of hell. Eris' father, already a terrible parent, colludes with Rudy to have Rudy have sex with Eris without her consent. Now, should I remind you that she is a child? She cannot consent. Even in a fantasy world, that is the line one must not cross. The plan is essentially, we'll get them alone and Rudy can do what he wants. Rudy doesn't reject this plan. He thinks about it. He considers it. Now, does it actually happen? Of course not, it doesn't. But the intent is there. The collusion is there. The prosecution might argue that if someone plans a crime and only fails because of external circumstances, they are guilty of conspiracy.
And what are you doing here?
And the crime here, sexual assault of a minor. The prosecutor, Your Honor, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury, has presented exhibits from season 1 alone. We haven't even touched the panty shrine, we haven't touched the slave stuff. That's all for season 2. The man has lasted over his own mother, lamented not getting hard from breastfeeding, worn a maid's panties as a face mask, admitted to wanting a lolly, falsely accused his father of rape, called a 9-year-old hot with his dad's approval, openly planned to groom that same child, staged a traumatic fake kidnapping, groped an unconscious 9-year-old and tried to steal her panties, colluded to have sex with the child without her consent, and if this were a real court, I'd ask for life in prison.
Leave it or not in jail right away.
But it's not. It's YouTube. So we'll ask for something simpler. Stop calling him based. Stop calling it realistic growth. He's a diddler with the magic stuff. And I rest my case.
Okay. Like, way to tell us what